This is Judy for a comment.
Go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, thanks to Rob, I found out about that and yesterday quickly signed on, and the first, I'm set for May 15th with an Idaho group for my virtual test, and they send it with a long explanation of everything you need to do to get ready. And there's a form, I forget the name of the form, that you'll wind up signing ahead of time, and then they issue the license if you pass, and they tell you right away. But you have to have a room with no windows and things. You better to have 2 cameras, a computer that you do your test on, and a side like iPhone camera that can show the area so that they know that there's nothing around you. So it's a very organized sort of thing. And I canceled my Yuma one and told Don and Yuma about this. And that was for May 28th. And said they ought to check into doing theirs virtually as well, because it does seem to be pretty well organized.
And Judy, just to clarify for everybody just joining us, we're talking about the VE sessions conducted by GLARG, the Greater Los Angeles Amateur Radio Group, conducting virtual examinations across the country. Is that right? You registered with GLARG?
Yes, yes. And their explanatory email said, we're just starting this and we've had a number of glitches. Here are the things that don't work and we're still finding other things. It sounds like Heather is one of the other things they just found. But it sounds like that they're moving forward pretty well, and there are teams all over from Hawaii to New Jersey and Maine. And you just have to get on the site and just go through every one of the scheduled things and find one that's open, because all of the early ones are full.
Okay. Judy, Heather, thank you very much. Any final comments on this before we turn it over to Dave and get the meeting started?
I just want to say that there is a link to like a 6-page document that talks about what you need to do to take the test. And it explains the room and all of, the room you need to be in and what you need to do. So if anyone's interested, if they go to the GLARG website or GLARG website, they should be able to find the links under the VE testing. It'll say remote testing, and then from there they can find the documents they need to take the test.
Okay, Heather, thank you. It's 9 after the hour. Dave, let's get started. And you're recording, good.
Yes, Fortunately, I didn't get all of that recorded, but the website for GLARG is glaarg.org, and it has all the information once you open that website up about the remote testing and how that's going and what you need to do. So with that, welcome everybody. See, we have 62 people here, so that's good. Rob and Bruce are both co-hosts on here, so we can get things started. From the ARRL standpoint, nothing has really changed. They're still looking at doing remote VE testing through their system, and I haven't heard anything back on anything directly from them yet, as of yet. The FCC, I think about 3 days ago, finally agreed that remote testing was good, and they didn't see a problem with it as long as it was handled properly. And I think all the VECs pretty much do that. They're pretty conscientious about getting everything done and keeping it secure. I think somebody mentioned Yuma, and Yuma is doing it live. No more than 7 people at a time with 3 VEs, and I haven't heard exactly how it's working, but I understand it's working well enough to keep them going and keep the sessions going. So that's what they're doing over there. If you would feel like driving that far, I think that GLARG is probably a better way to do it, and that way you can sit in your comfortable chair and do it from here. I think we're going to have to see. It's glaarg.org.
Dave,
Yes,
to help people remember, it's the Greater Los Angeles Area Radio Group.
that works.
GLAARD, something like that.
That works.
So it's LAA, and that's why Los Angeles area. Of course,
Right.
we're in that area. So what can I say?
Correct. Correct. Thanks, Jay. All right, let's turn this over to Bruce and get things started this morning.
No, you're not off the hook.
What do you have in mind this morning?
Before you run away, any updates from the ARRL? And to be candid, I haven't been in the loop for probably the last 2 weeks since our last meeting. Any changes in any rules, guidelines, or restrictions from the ARRL on the VHF contest or field day that you're aware of?
Nothing that I am aware of. As far as I know, there are no plans to change the requirements for field day. You could run a 1B and go out in your backyard and set up another antenna and run everything like you would do at a field day site. But everything has to be isolated from the house, but you're still home. So that would be one option, or just go with the home station. So far, that's going to be the only alternatives this year.
Okay. I'm still dreading the notion of full legal limit 1 deltas, but I guess we'll get there. The VHF contest is going to be an interesting event as well. I'm hearing from other areas that while they're allowing people to be out and about, the folks that might be operating portable or mobile, even rover, as the case might be, may have some restrictions because some of the parks and some of the other areas may not be accessible, may still be closed off, or may still be restricted in access. The VHF event in particular draws a number of people that might, as an example, go to a high hilltop or go to a mountain location or go to some other area like that where they've got at least a opportunity to go out and be able to transmit and receive a little bit better and not be so constrained by terrain around their local QTH. Don't really know how that's going to play out. The folks up in LA are really circling the wagon, so to speak, to try to figure that out and see what they're going to be able to go out and do to either work through it, work around it, find alternate locations, things like that. And as I receive more information and details, I'll be happy to pass it out to the group. The operating advantage is clearly in someone's favor if they're high up and there isn't anything in between you and folks that you're trying to work. That's where that whole line of sight concept comes in as a generalization. So I'm sure that you would want to be able to try to work those folks as well as them work you if they're available. The field day event is still kind of interesting. I don't know whether or not the ARES group would like to go out and do something special as an enhancement. I'm kind of throwing that out there as a discussion opportunity, maybe if not now, for later. It's food for thought. I know we've done a number of rallies so far, and I expect that with the interest in those and some of the feedback, we'll probably continue doing them. It gives us something specifically to go out and do, opportunity-wise, to go out and check our gear out. And if we're playing with antennas or trying out different radios or different modes, it gives us, as a group, the opportunity to go out and do that in a scheduled manner where it's not just yeah, I put up this new antenna and I haven't worked anybody for weeks because nobody's out there. So it's kind of a cool thing that we're doing. If we get to the point that we're looking at field day, the ARRL says you can't get together as groups, you're not going to be able to go out and turn in a club log, or things like that officially, or they'll take a club log, but they're not going to recognize a score. I'm not so worried about the score, to be honest. It's fun to go out and be able to say that you were placed high in the rankings, where especially in Southern California, we're not necessarily favored for that. That's always kind of a feather in the cap for the group. But I'm thinking that maybe we put something loosely together, formulated after the rallies, where maybe we have our own little, not internal competition, but something where we're driving our own participation and maybe driving it more specifically with some of the other ARES groups and other response groups around the region. We've built a number of relationships in and around Southern California, some a little bit to the east in Nevada and Arizona to be sure, and then, you know, certainly in some of the other geographic areas of California. It might be interesting to put something together amongst the groups, if you will, and kind of have maybe a friendly competition or rally, but just putting that out there. John, I saw that you raised your hand, CPO.
Yeah, just a quick comment about Field Day. I'm friends with Rhea on Facebook. She's a assistant director in the Hudson division back east, and she has posted that whatever committee it is that creates the rules for Field Day at the league has already specifically said no changes in the rules for this year.
Fair enough. And I was not expecting anything different. I just never know. With some of the things changing and lightening up, I was hoping that maybe there would be a difference, but getting this close to the event, probably not so much. So that means for, you know, Pat will just raise the El Cajon Tower trailer in his front yard, and he'll sit out there in a lawn chair and maybe a solar panel, and he'll be QRP portable. That'll be Pat. That'll be megahertz. He'll take care of that. I will probably be flea power myself somewhere, but we'll figure that out. Other activities in and around the area we can talk about later, but let's start it off like we normally would. A lot of folks are on here. If you are new to the group, if you've just recently joined ARES, if this is your first Zoom party and you'd like to introduce yourself, raising your hand will recognize you. You can say hello, you can introduce yourself, you can say what it is you're interested in and why we are here. Not seeing any raised hands on my side.
Yeah, I'm Paul, KE8NN, just checking in and saying hello.
There you go.
I'm going to mute because my computer crashes when I do too much with it.
Very good. Welcome aboard, sir. Thank you for being here with us. Yeah, I was kind of in an awkward position as well. I thought I had done all my Windows updates on a different machine. And I started it back up this morning, and it came back to the balance of the Windows 10 monthly updates. So unfortunately, I am on the work machine. If I drop out every once in a while, it's because I'm going through 3 different routers, and I am tunneling back to work to go out to the internet, which sounds kind of silly, but it's very secure. So it is what it is. And yes, Rob, I did say I'm not concerned about the score.
Was there somebody else who last month did not have an opportunity to introduce themselves? Somebody that's joined in the last couple of months? Not on the net. Thank you.
All right. So as far as local events, again, it sounds like we've covered most of the operating events. We do want to talk today a little bit about the VHF Rally for those that participated. To be candid, I haven't seen all of the scores. It looks like the initial scores that were turned in for that were done in logging programs and or electronically. I'm not sure we've seen folks that have turned in the paper scores yet, and I want to make sure that those are in there, but we'll chat a little bit about that. Want to get some perspectives on what was learned from the group and what was observed from the group during different parts of the day, and especially on the different bands, because that's always a learning experience. In unfortunate news, for those that haven't already been provided this, we've lost one of our community members recently. N6 CEO Don Bain has passed, and for many of us who don't necessarily know the name and might recognize the call sign, I guess the most affectionate way I can describe the gentleman was that he was very often referred to as the voice of ARES on the Sunday morning 75 meter net. He was a strong participant for many years, including ones that did not include my participation directly before I became the section emergency coordinator. He was very active over several of the other, lacking a better description, regimes that were out there for ARES, where there were different groups that were running the organization and different versions of how the organization was being run. But Don was always a participant in the meetings, I remember seeing him many times when I was able to go out and stop by when the meetings were, of all things, actually held over at Green Hospital in the Scripps family. And we would go out and have one of the meetings in the back rooms there and have the potluck, but the self-serve buffet style breakfast, and everybody would chow down, have time to go out and chat with each other, and then meetings would start and we'd go off on whatever topic of the day happened to be. And that, good grief, that goes back 15, 16, 17 years, kind of in that range, just to put a reference on it. Don was also very active, as you might know, or folks might know, in the Convair Club. He was a treasurer there for a lot of years. He was also one of the really strong participants and volunteers and planners for the field day events that they still to this day conduct. Great guy, always a super strong supporter of this group, of this effort, and of what ARES represents to the community, and he will be sorely missed. The interesting thing that K1CT Bill passed along that I didn't know was that of all things, I can imagine this, but I can't imagine this, which is why it's so cool. Bill wrote that outside of ham radio, Don would often reflect on his early years and early days in San Diego, riding his Honda 90 dirt bike over the barren hills and mesas of what are now University City and the UTC Mall. Don had grown up in Arizona and had always appreciated the beautiful San Diego weather. And apparently also, unbeknownst to me, was a regular tennis player up until about 4 or 5 years ago. I guess I can visualize that, but never would have guessed. I know that's just amazing, because that just brought back some tingling memories when I read that about growing up here in Southern California myself, and especially before a lot of the local cities and communities had grown up. And that would be spot on. Most of the mesas that were here in San Diego, even coming out of the 60s, were often very bare. I mean, they were just still, canyon country, dry land. There were mesas and, leftover grazing land from cattle and or bombing ranges from the local military. So kind of imagine all of that happening. And to say the least, Don will certainly be missed, and we'll definitely miss hearing him on the air. So unfortunate, and we really appreciate the fact that we had a couple of folks put together kind of a little brief bio for us. In other respective news, I don't really have anything that's imminent. We do want to talk about again, the VHF Rally and some opportunities going forward with that. I will mention that this afternoon, for those that aren't aware, there's a operating opportunity on 6 meters between 4 and 8 o'clock local time this evening. It's what they call a VHF sprint, and effectively they give you a 4-hour operating window in your local time zone to play with. Not really intended to go out and be something that's international or national, really meant to be localized. But you know what, if 6 meters happens to be open at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and you happen to be working folks out of state, so be it. And here's what's happening. The 4 to 8 hour window locally is the 4 to 8 hour window locally in each time zone. So if you do the math and you subtract 3 hours out of our 4 o'clock window, that means the folks on the East Coast should be starting at what, 1 o'clock? So you might be on just in case the band happens to be open, and same thing for the folks that are operating in the central time zone. It's the 4 to 8 hour window for them as well. So we have the operating advantage potentially in being on early. It won't help you with any points, but it'll help them with points. Our window tonight, 4 to 8 o'clock, no repeaters, 6 meters only. And I candidly expect that a lot of the traffic and a lot of the effort will probably be on digital, just because of conditions. The southeastern states and the eastern seaboard has had some ducting over the last week or so. Most of that has finally gone away. There were still reports middle of the week having ducting open between Texas, Louisiana, and some of the other states down in that area. Despite the fact the ARES had already closed up, they were still doing it. Not really sure what other operating advantages there's going to be from an enhancement perspective. That's probably it. But for us locally, 6 meters do pretty much what we had in the Vhf Rally plan. 50.125 for sideband. If you've got CW capabilities, you guys know where to hang out already. 52.525 as well. And if anybody's interested in that, I can provide a link after the meeting to where you can go out and get direct details about submitting scores if you're willing to go out and do that. Not really a fancy thing, just an operating opportunity where some other folks might be on 6 meters. And definitely, I know some folks up in the LA Orange County area that will be on for that. I don't have anything else initially. Rob, anything for training, interoperability with other groups, anything like that in and around the region? And tell us about how you almost fried bacon. Because that's
Okay,
an
so
operating,
I'm looking forward to upcoming operating events. We've been talking about a future VHF rally and a future HF rally, all leading up to field day. So I'm hoping that we can get some of that scheduled. The frying bacon comment is I've been doing some WinLink HF VARA load tests to see how long it really takes to transfer files. And so I've been moving a 5K file over and over again to gateways in the Western US. And because of the high duty cycle on data transmissions, as you know, the transmitter has been warming up, but no rigs have been harmed so far. Back to Bruce, K6RJF.
and that's usually where we see people do little tricks, especially depending on what the radio is. In a lot of cases, especially when it's an ICOM, and you've got that 4-pin jack on the back that's meant for the external tuner, there is 12 volts that's applied to that. And a lot of folks will cheat a little bit and find a very low current muffin fan or something similar like a computer fan, plug it into those and tap off the power so you don't need to go inside the radio, and then figure out some way to go out and mount that using double stick tape or something like that to help operationalize the cooling of the radio under the higher than normal, higher power than normal duty cycles. I'm glad you didn't kill anything, but I made a mental note that if by any chance you ever donate a radio to ARES, that'll probably not be one that we want to keep. So, hi. I don't have anything else. If we want to get started, and anybody would like to go out and lead the dialogue, unless I'm missing something, Dave or Rob, let's talk a little bit about what occurred during the VHF rally. And I'm particularly interested in feedback from the people in the participation zone that actually played, what they learned, what they observed, what they thought was interesting, what they couldn't figure out. Let's talk through that, so maybe we all have a good learning experience from that.
The only thing I have here, in addition to what you said, is on the 20th is Kids Day. So good time to get on the air. And there's still a lot of kids that are home, and we might be able to stir up some more interest in amateur radio in the younger group. So good time to think about that, getting on the air. I'm sure Kevin will have some things coming up on that as we get a little closer. If he has anything semi-organized or set up with some of the school groups or anything.
Good to hear. I haven't heard anything yet, and you're right. That was also one of the calendar items.
Hey, Chris has a hand up.
Chris, go ahead.
Chris, we're not hearing you. Yep, you did it again.
Yeah, what's the calling frequency for the using CW on the 6 meter contest?
Don't know that there is a calling frequency specifically for CW. Generally, you'll find anything that's below 50.100, usually between 50.080, 50.100, is probably going to be about right. There really isn't anything specific. There probably is something labeled, but It's also one of those deals where, depending on which band chart and band guide that you read, I've seen all kinds of interesting numbers there. 50.100 to roughly 50.120 or even 125 is supposed to be the international DX calling window. So in theory, even though it's available to us here in Southern California and the United States in general, people will generally really frown on the fact that you're operating below 50.125 for sideband, even though there's absolutely nothing out there and there's nothing going on. For those that are actually listening in that spot, you'll be surprised how many people will suddenly jump on and say that you're in international waters, so to speak. I would expect to hear things between 50.125 up to maybe 50.150, maybe up to 50.200. If you're listening around, just because it sounds like it's dead on 50.125 here, I always encourage people to be very patient and spin the dial. If folks on the East Coast are operating and folks in the Midwest and Central states are operating, just because you would expect the calling frequency and maybe around that to be busy, it may not be from the propagation that we have, if we have any, to that area. There's a lot of times where I found the folks on the East Coast and found folks in the Midwest, you know, up around 50.170, 50.180, and it sounds like there's one or two people out there, but that's kind of where they're hovering at as opposed to being lower in the band. One of those wonderful things about 6 meters.
Thanks, Bruce.
So any other operating comments about what happened during the course of the day?
Here we got
Mark, two
Frank.
hands up right now.
Yeah, Frank and Danny both have hands up. Danny, go ahead.
Do you have a comms? Can you hear me?
You're
Yes.
good.
Okay, here we go. Anyways, last Wednesday, I'm changing the subject here real quick. Last Wednesday, I had a scare, and the scare was I was diagnosed with Bell palsy. I thought it was a stroke. So I didn't hesitate to dial 911. I was transported to UCSD Medical over there at Hillcrest, evaluated, same day release with medications. My condition is slowly improving. My right eye still waters a little bit, but hopefully I'll regain some more muscular movements in that area. I've been now being treated with acupuncture treatments, nutrition, and diet, and also other methodologies of facial muscular massages. So big improvement today. I noticed I could lift both eyebrows, but the right eyebrow is just a little weak. So continue working on that, and that's all I have to say, and I'll return it back to the host.
Thank you, Danny. I hope you're progressing and I hope you feel better. Sorry to hear that you had the issue, but glad that you recognize that it's something that needed to be looked at immediately. I know a lot of folks out there might have that, yeah, let's wait and see if this gets any better. And oftentimes for a lot of medical conditions, that's not the right answer. Thank you for sharing. You'd mentioned, Dave, somebody else had their hand up.
Yeah, Frank, you had your hand up.
Yes. Oh, hi, Danny. I'm glad you're feeling better. I was curious about 6 meters. Did Chris do a breakout by band? I actually heard a couple people on 6 meters on FT8, but by the time I got my gear organized, they had left the frequency. So next time I'd like to try FT8.
Well, maybe tonight will be your opportunity for that. I would certainly be ready to go. And with all sincerity, a lot of the folks that I know that have been chatting about this, and there are not going to be hundreds of people on the air for this event tonight or this afternoon. There will probably be at the very most maybe several dozen, and that's if we participate. Yeah, tonight would be a good opportunity for that. I'm not entirely sure that we've set a tombstone as far as getting the logs in, but I'm thinking that perhaps by next weekend we want to cut off submissions. So again, as Rob reminded folks via email, if you haven't sent your login, please do so. If it's paper, you got a couple of choices. You could transcribe it to something electronic or it can be emailed. I'd also mentioned that if you've got a decent cell phone, just take a picture. As long as the picture is, legible and readable, we'll take that for the time being. So part of the exercise from the logging perspective, and kind of as a lead into the logging discussion we're going to have here and presentation, the logging for an event like this is pretty critical. If you're really doing it for anything other than hobby, when you're doing it in a contest arena or for contesting efforts or recognition efforts, a lot of things need to happen right if you've got two people that are correlating on a log. So if I'm exchanging my contact information with Dave or with Rob as an example, and I turn in my log, the qualification for that log entry to be valid is that the call sign for both parties' exchanges need to be correct. The time that we contacted each other also needs to correlate and be correct. And, this is one of those, this isn't the 60s or the 70s and people have wind up time instruments anymore. Most folks have something electronic. Most folks have their computer out, their watch, their cell phone, something like that. If you're doing this for real in a contest environment or a recognition environment for awards, a lot of times they'll do what they call rubber stamping or rubber time keeping, if you will. They might allow a minute or 2 minute tolerance on what you report as the time the contact was made versus my side as an example. As long as they're close, they'll take it and say, yeah, clock error or whatever else. You also need to go out and record what mode you were in. So if you were talking, it was phone. If you were, talking and it was digital, you need to mark down digital. Things like that are important. And then we had the grid square exchange as well. And to keep it simple, we only made it 4 characters to minimize the stress there. So if Chris is analyzing my log and Dave's log and Rob's log, for every exchange that Dave and Rob and I made between each other, those things need to correlate and be correct. If the grid square is wrong, if the time is way off, if the band is not logged correctly, things like that, then that contact doesn't count, which is, you don't get the point for that. You don't get the recognition for it. You may not get an award. That type of thing happens. So part of this was like a 213 exercise where you look at it for an accuracy perspective and you see how you can minimize the error rate, if you will, and maximize the accuracy while you're running through it. I know that sounds really exciting and all that, but that's kind of the purpose behind the log piece. Chris, you were first, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. So number one, somebody asked how many 6-meter contacts I've received so far. 40, probably includes both parties in most cases. Secondly, if you're going to send in logs, I'd really appreciate if you put them in some kind of spreadsheet or something to make it easier for me, because it's a little bit hard to read the writing. If you really can't do it, if you don't have a computer to punch them into either Google Docs or a spreadsheet, yeah, go ahead and snap a picture with your phone and send it. But I'd really appreciate a translation on that. And I have not done, I've done some pivots. I have not done a pivot on or put the formulas in to do the time matching, Bruce. But yeah, I mean, it's directionally correct. And obviously we're missing probably quite a few logs, and one of them is yours.
Yep, I'm aware of that. The other part that I mentioned that I didn't mention, maybe that was critical. Peter, I see your hand up. If I submit a log and I've got Dave's contact in it because I've contacted Dave on 6 meters, but Dave also submits a log and he doesn't have my contact in it, that's also called a broken or a busted QSO. That means you don't get the point for it because somebody didn't log it or forgot to log it or missed it or whatever else. So again, it's almost like a 213 exercise where you're doing your best to get all of the elements and all the basics correct so that when you actually need to go out and be able to do this reliably, you've kind of got the procedure down. And Peter, go ahead.
So this is my first logging exercise, and I used the N1MM log just because it was free and I thought it would be a good place to start. It worked great. What I did notice though is that this contest was not one that was on their list of sort of standard published contests. And when you set up the log, you have to pick what the contest is, and it sets up what fields you're collecting. So in some cases, it didn't pick up a field that we decided was necessary. So for example, I think it was FM on 6 meters maybe, or maybe it was SSB on 6 meters, wasn't considered part of the contest. And so it didn't really log that correctly. Also swapping back and forth between 2 radios, it didn't log power correctly. So I don't know if there's advice on getting that right, if that's not important, or if I just need to upgrade to a better logging system. But those are questions I had as a result of this.
No, those are great questions and observations. One of the things that you can do, and I guess we, practice makes perfect, right, for all of us. If there's enough interest, I'd like to go out and see us do this one more time before we get to the June field day event, which is roughly 4 weeks away. So maybe not this coming Saturday, but maybe the Saturday afterwards. Let's do this one more time and see if we get some more practice in for those that are interested. In the event of using something like N3FJP, they've got, Scott's got an entire catalog of applications like some of the other logging software organizations and companies do. One of them specifically is a VHF log, if you will. And even though it's intended for VHF related events like the CQ Worldwide VHF Contest or even the ARRL VHF Contest, even though it's not in the month of June, if you're using N3FJP and you are licensed to use that, use the VHF logger. It has, to your points, Peter, all of the correct elements that would need to be in there. It just isn't going to be submitted to the ARRL during June, and it's not going to be submitted to the CQ folks in the month of July. It'll be something that we just extract the log from and do the analysis for. Some of the general logging programs, as you mentioned, will allow you to go out and define fields, and you can also tell it to ignore things. The logging programs are pretty smart, and in the case that Peter's mentioning, there's a lot of, if you will, canned contests that are already pre-scripted. So for a certain event, it gives you, just like Peter said, all of the elements that you need to fill out. It doesn't really let you skip over and doesn't let you forget because it's prompting you to put data somewhere where the contest is asking for it, where the contest would require it. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know whether or not there's something that you can custom roll with N1MM. It's not one of the apps that I normally run, although we've done it on field day a number of times. The other general logging programs may not carry over, as an example, the grid square piece, because that's more of a specific field that you would use for VHF exchanges as opposed to HF. Not really sure. We can certainly do some research and look at that though. But those were great observations. And Mike, saw that you had your hand up as well. Go ahead.
Yes. Hold on. Got a problem here with too many devices going. Anyway. Try that. Okay. I'm going to. No, it's it.
You're good now.
I'm good now?
No, it's back. You were good for a moment.
Try that. Is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For N1MM, it's one of the best logging programs available. Most of the big contesters use it all the time for whatever contest they're running. The thing that you should probably try for FM and SSB is just use phone. And you can set up your own custom contests. I don't remember what contest this was run under, if it was just run under something that we did. I'm sorry I didn't have time to work on it last weekend, but I didn't participate. But you can set up your own custom fields. It's not trivial, but it's something somebody could do and publish to the rest of the group. So I would suggest looking into that. There are simpler logging ones that you can use that aren't as smart as N1MM, and sometimes it does become too smart to for its own good, really. So back to you, Bruce.
All right, thanks. Any other questions, comments before we get into the presentation portion regarding the event last week? Looks like Jay had his hand up. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I was been going back and forth about N1MM versus FJP, and so as Peter observed, N1MM was free, and I started with that. Not sure, it's complicated. And yes, I looked at how you can define your own contest, but the list of contests I find extremely daunting. There's like 100 of them, and Bill, I think, recommended that I use the VHF contest, and that worked out okay. Unfortunately, now I created one too many. And how do you delete a contest from the database? Well, apparently nobody would ever want to do that, so you can't, which is kind of interesting. So I'm still wondering if I should play with, pay for FJP and try that, or it's interesting to hear Mike strongly recommend N1MM. Any other thoughts on that would be appreciated. Post to the group or contact me privately.
Yeah,
and as a reminder, we do have presentations coming up in a little bit on each of the logging programs that were used during the Vhf Rally.
Okay, good.
And Mike again, N6 or NA6MB, sorry.
What did you want me to say?
Looks like you still had your hand up. I was just checking.
Oh, I guess I didn't lower it. I thought you'd do that after I talked. Go ahead.
No worries. Okay, we're good. All right, so from my side, I had limited participation last week. I actually got called into work for an emergency that ran from the week, sadly and unexpectedly, into the Saturday morning. So I was actually at La Jolla, had my handheld with me with a long whip antenna on it. And on 2 meters in particular, but also on 446, I was able to hear a number of stations, surprisingly, up and down the coast, and not terribly unexpectedly, because we're along the coast with that particular hospital as well, with just a couple of small little canyons and mesas in the way. But I was actually truly surprised by the number of stations I was hearing from LA. Didn't really hear quite as many on the San Diego side. And when I managed to make it home, probably just around 4 o'clock or so, wasn't able to quite get on the radio then, but I was listening, and it did appear that we had some inversion related propagation enhancement that was going on, just based on listening to some repeaters that I know of up in Santa Barbara and beyond, and places like that. So on UHF in particular, the operating advantage for that would have been that you would have had the opportunity to get a signal through, especially before all the water vapor starts happening, fog starts happening along the coast. And I know it's FM, it's not necessarily weak signal stuff, but even on FM, there were stations that didn't change their location, didn't change their power. And just from the time that I was able to actually start listening from home through probably a little after 9 o'clock in the evening, these stations were still on the air. And the impact was very dramatic. Signals that were, S5, S6, S7 on a on my quad band Yaesu 8900 that I kind of used for casual monitoring were dropping down to almost, S0 at the noise level. And these stations didn't change anything on their side. Again, not power level, not antenna, not anything. They were out there operating. They were still working folks that were local to them. But that enhancement opportunity that we had here in San Diego, as an example, deteriorated very significantly, starting probably about 5:30, and then certainly by 6 o'clock, it was well on the decline. And it didn't take very long for it to drop to next to nothing. So the learning opportunity there for those that haven't actually experienced that on VHF, this is actually very typical, especially in Southern California. A lot of the VHF folks that get on for the contests and the events will get on 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Traditionally, if you're doing weak signal related work, and I know a few of you out there do this, there are Sunday morning nets that regularly occur. There are Sunday morning scheduled times where people in and around the region try to get on the air. There's not quite as many of us as there used to be, but it's pretty it's pretty reliable to be on at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning on 2 meters if you've got sideband gear and you've got a decent antenna, especially on 2 meters as an example, and be able to work up into the central valleys up toward Fresno and Sacramento and things like that. And it doesn't stay that way for long. It pretty much drops off and starts going away from, you know, maybe 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And usually that's when those events and those nets are done. And then it's on and off after that. It's not reliable. On UHF, sometimes in the morning, you'll get that little bit of enhancement. Usually, again, starting at about 10 or 11 o'clock in the mornings, you'll start, if there's going to be any kind of inversion related enhancement, it'll start up about 10 or 11 o'clock as things start warming up. The atmospheric layers change a little bit. And I am talking atmospheric now. I'm not talking E-skip or anything like that. And you'll start seeing UHF signals build. One of the things that I would offer you all as an opportunity to go out and take a listen for or take a look at, for those that have VHF radios, the National Weather Service channels are kind of my beacon on what I like to listen to go out and get an idea of what the VHF conditions are going to be like. And obviously, it's a pretty easy analysis. The better you can hear the stations up in LA on the weather channels, the better off your conditions on 2 meters are very likely to be. And, you know, during odd months out of the year and during interesting propagation events throughout the year, if you can hear every single weather station on your radio, and sometimes that's doable, there are times that you will hear every single weather station frequency in use. That means you got some interesting opportunities that you can take advantage of potentially on 2 meters, even on FM, but then certainly on sideband in and around the region. So that's kind of my propagation thingy, but let's go ahead and get started. And I think we want to start off with AI6KU to do the presentation. I know you've got other commitments, Bob, and thank you for offering your services to go out and tutor us a little bit this morning. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead here and share my screen, I hope. And let me I got a little one pager here. Let me bring that up. And so share my screen so everybody can see this, and let me know, obviously, if it doesn't share. There we go. Oh, maybe I need to put that in full screen. I don't know. Let's see.
There you go.
Yeah, it may not be. Well, I guess I can put it in presentation mode. Show, start slideshow. All right, here we go. Just real quick, these are just some of the. This is N1MM plus. It is, as somebody just noted, it is incredibly complex. It does everything. And in that sense, it is sometimes very difficult to use, even for people who use it regularly. I am using it because the mentors who brought me along in this world of amateur radio used it, and so that's why I use it. And as I said, it's incredibly complex. It does everything. And they regularly update it with any changes to contests. And I will show you in a moment the list of contests that can do. But in terms of rig control, it can do frequencies, it can do mode. You can record your responses, you can record CQs. You can either play those directly from N1MM, or N1MM can play them off of your radio if you recorded them to your radio and you're not using audio from your computer. It can also use audio from your computer for both for voice contacts, as well as for obviously for digital, as well as for CW. It does automatic contact entry, timing, as somebody noted. We're not using, it reads the time right off of your computer. It does general DX entries, which is sort of what I keep up on mine most of the time, but it also does all of the contest modes, and it does all modes as well, and it has an automatic interface with FL Digi if you're doing digital. There's a band map that is used for spotting. You can spot stations that are on that have been spotted, and that's tied to the Telnet spotting network. So you, depending on whatever spotting network you dial into, or Telnet into, you can, it'll automatically put those up on the band map. And then it will automatically, if you want it to, it will automatically spot any contacts that you make. And it is free, and there are frequent updates to it. Almost every time I log on to N1MM from my computer, it says, "Ooh, there's a new update. You want to do the update?" So they do lots of updates, lots of new features. People are always submitting, can you do this? Can you do this? And can you get this radio to do rig control, and on and on and on. So they're always doing new things. But let me go back here and get out of that and show you the program then. So here's the program. And so just to start with, if I wanted to create a new log in a database, it would say, what type of log do you want? So the default is just DX. But if you wanted to look through all,
We're not seeing your log, we're seeing your presentation.
Let me, all right, your screen sharing has paused. Okay, let's resume share. Okay, and I don't want to share that now. Your screen sharing is paused. Your client recording.
You may have shared the actual application rather than your entire screen.
Okay, new share. Okay, here we go. Now we'll be back. Now this will get it. All right, everybody see that now?
There you go.
Okay, so if I was going to create a new log, you can create multiple databases, and within each database is a log, or multiple logs. And so, but this is just a list of the contests that are currently supported by N1MM, supported and updated on a regular basis. So they're international. They support virtually everything that's out there. Though I will admit that I had a little bit of a hard time finding anything that would support our VHS expedition here this past weekend. I just pretty much gun decked it and put the information into the regular logging, which I'll show you here in a second. So let's see. I'm still sharing, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the normal entry screen. This is where your call sign might go. If I was AI6KU, I put that in there. I can say I'm on 20 meters, and then it gives me the option of give them what did I send, what did I receive for a signal report, what was the person's name, and what was the comment. Pretty straightforward. If I want to, I can clear that up. Then these buttons, these are all function buttons. They will work as mouse clicks, or they will work if you have a Windows machine. They will work as, by the way, this only runs on Windows. So if you have a Windows machine, you can just use the function buttons. These can be set up to record, to play the voice on your the voice recording that you have on your radio. They can be set up to replay the voice recording that you make using N1MM. So, and it will play through the radio. And then this is the band map over here. And as you can see, I have 3 stations over here. If I click on any one of these stations, it will tune the radio to that station's frequency. And that was all fed from this window down here at the bottom. And you can see that these are the spots that have been coming in. And I can set filters on these spots to be what I wanted. So bands and modes, I can set filters on them and things like that. So not everything shows up in here. And then one other quick thing here, I know I'm running out of time, is I have a lot of different windows that I can put up here. And if I'm in a contest and I want to know what are the available mults and queues, I can put that up here, and then I can stick that over here to the side, and I can say, oh, okay, well, those are the possibilities of things I can do. I can also put up the band maps up. I can look at the gray line. I obviously have the entry window up. I can look at a digital interface. If I go up here now and I put in that I want to change modes and I want to go to PSK31, now what will happen is it will bring up FLDigi, and here's my primary interface to the sound card, and it'll bring all that up, and I can now I'm operating in digital mode, and if I'm done with that and I want to go back to single sideband, and I can go back to upper sideband, and again it will say it's closing and I'm no longer in digital mode. All of these this band map over here is all set up when you set up what you want in for this particular log. And let's see, I guess let me pause here. Are there any questions? All right.
Yeah, Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, Mike, I can't see hands, so go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Couple of comments. On the band map over there on the left, there's a couple of things over there that are very interesting. I use N1MM all the time for HF contests. I haven't used it too much for VHF. But you can also, as you work those stations, they will change colors if you've already worked them, and they won't appear there the same as the ones that are still available for you to work. You can also use keyboard commands to go just like I don't remember exactly the key thing. I don't have a keyboard in front of me right now, but you can go up or down by hitting a function like a control up arrow or something. It'll go to the next one up. You don't have to click on it. You can just don't take your fingers off the keyboard. Just do arrow up, and it'll go to the LY1R.
There are a lot of keyboard shortcuts with N1MM.
The other thing you can set up is have a timeout, so that things that have been spotted disappear after 10 minutes. So if you don't hear them until they get spotted again, they disappear. So it unclutters your band map a little bit there. You can also set up auto CQ. So if you've got voice or CW messages set up there under your F keys, you can just turn it on, and you have to be on run, and then it'll call CQ until you stop it, or until somebody calls you, and then you hit escape or hit your foot switch or whatever to stop it from doing that. Now, as you said, it can either play, if you have a radio that has internal voice keying, it can either play those messages, or like a K3 series radios have those internal ones. But you can also set up ones inside the computer, and you can have them different for different contests, which is a nice thing about N1MM, is that it saves your contest settings. So next year on the same contest, everything will be ready to go, unless you change databases. This is one thing that I have a problem with, because I make a new database every year and then put the logs in. So I have a 2019 log set for all the contests I worked that year and so on, so it doesn't get too big. Because it will get a little slower if it gets really huge. Got to keep that in mind. So let's see. The other thing, somebody asked, I think Pat asked if you can do FT8. You can, but it's not as simple as what you just did with JT65 or whatever the one you pulled up. You can do it though. And the last thing is that if you're working in a multi-station, you can network them together. So if I work somebody and then the other station switches to 80 and I go, okay, I'm gonna go to 10, however it works out. You're working on the same logs. So it shows up as being worked already. So those are my comments. Back to you. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it.
We got another comment in there.
Kind of rounds out the capabilities, but let me turn it back to net control here and and see if there's anything else. But I think you have some other loggers that you want to look at as well.
Yeah, Jay had a comment first, Bob.
Yeah, I did. There is under somewhere in there, one of those windows is answering Pat's question. There is an interface with WSJTX. So, and I've seen someone at Field Day set this up to log FTA contacts, but I don't know how that's done. I just know that it's possible to do. That's all.
And I'm not that familiar with the digital logging as well, so I'm not going to embarrass myself.
They do interact. You have to connect them. Like I said, it's not trivial. You have to set up some UDP things between them so they can talk to each other and make sure everything's matching, and then it will work. It does work.
Anything else? Any other questions, or you want to move on to the next logging program?
So if anybody has any additional questions, let's go out and circulate that via email if you wouldn't mind. That way everybody can benefit from that.
Good idea.
If that's okay. And thank you, sir. I'm thinking perhaps let's do KC6MIE with N3FJP. Gosh, that rhymes.
Okay, doke. I'll talk a little bit about amateur contact log or AC log. I've used it about 10 months now, and I went from WinnieQF for about 27, almost 28 years to that, and I like it. It's the full program is about $50. And let me share the screen here. I'll give you some, let's see. Rob sent me a couple. He used it on the VHF. Let's see. Well, let me go here first. Can everybody see that? I guess. Hopefully.
Yeah, now we can.
And, okay. They have a lot, there's good support. Scott, the originator of it, offers good support. Plus there's a group and you get feedback. You put out a query and you'll get tons of feedback. But there's pretty much every contest that's current that he has, and he does updates periodically. It's just, and the state QSO parties, I think I've done 2. I've done the New Mexico, and he updates those with the abbreviations and so forth. Specialty logs, he's got, I haven't researched some of this, but it does a lot. And let's see, there's a lot of YouTube videos on it, specific areas of it. He does a lot of tutorials with videos on YouTube. And let me show you a screen. Another screen. This is Field Day logging. Well, what this the program, the main program, AC log, is the master log. But then he has separately, he has contest logs, and you if you buy the whole package, then that includes that. But if you can buy each individual, the contest, the state QSOs, and so forth, and then just the ones you're interested in, and then you can save that as an ADIF and then marry that back to your master log. And I'll show you my master log if I can find it. Now let me see. I was going to show you the VHF. Hold on here. Here we go. Okay, this is Rob's Field Day, right? Oh no, this is the VHF. This is the VHF screen. And
I don't think we're seeing your screen yet. We're still looking at the web page.
Oh, okay. So let me see. New share, right? Okay. Here it is. Sorry. There, I found it. You see it now?
Yeah, that's got it. Thanks.
Okay, so that's Scott's VHF log, and you can go in there and edit accordingly. If you put the wrong field info in the field, you can go in there and edit each one. So let me show you the main master log. Let me see. I gotta find it. Okay, this is my log currently, and you can list them. You can set them up to view the last 50 or all of them.
You flashed to it and then it went back to the other screen.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, I got to do a new share. That should do it. Okay. You should see the master log now.
Now we have it.
Everybody see that? Okay. So anyway, this is the main AC master log. And so I worked the Vhf contest, or I entered a couple of weeks ago. Right. Here's my log right here. And then I did the worldwide CQ in October, not October, and yeah, I guess it was November or something. So you can bring that up if you know the date, or you can find a call. If you're looking for a specific call, I don't want that screen. So you can put in so you can edit that way, but it's there's a lot. I just want to emphasize there's a lot of support with it, and not only YouTube videos, but you can email him his responses pretty quick. And I do have one N1MM loaded, and I have it set up, but I haven't done too much with it because it's pretty complicated. Actually, this is taxing my abilities, but you do work on it slowly, it'll get there. So it's about, I think it's $50 for the full program and includes everything. And what else do I wanted to show? I guess any questions?
Looks like Mike has his hand raised again. Mike?
Yes, I have this one also, and I use this for a couple of things. One that's has a very good label printing. So actually, when I want to print labels to send QSL cards, which I do about twice a year, I export from an HRD to ADIF file, just the labels I want, and then come over to this program and print them. Then the other comment was, if you notice that screen that he had there, one of the menu entries on the top was net. And it's excellent for that, for running a net. You enter the call signs one at a time as people check in. It looks them up on QRZ if you have that connection, puts in their full name and all the information you can get from QRZ, and fills it in for you. Then you can call the people on the net in order or however you want to do that. What was my other comment about it? It's very simple to set up. The cost. So it's $50 for like 25 programs. They're like $10 each or $15 each. But if you buy the whole package, it's so you got loggers, you got field day, you got VHF, you got some propagation stuff. It's all a really nice package. This guy spent years making. And it's well worth the whole package. And then it's for life. Back to you.
Yeah, a comment
on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, a comment on that as well. As Mike had indicated, you can buy each one of these individually if you need them. And if you've bought one and you like it, Scott is also gracious enough that he'll let you pay the delta to upgrade to the full suite. One of the other things that Scott has done, and I've used his stuff for a long time, my original buy the entire suite price was under 30 bucks. It's perpetual licensing. As he improves the program and changes and updates the programs, your license key covers continuing to use the latest release and version. He's never charged for a version update. The other thing that's really cool about Scott is that if he adds a new logging program, which he has done since I bought my original suite, and this was 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to do winter field day. So I went out and wanted to get the winter field day log, and I offered to go out and, you know, make a purchase for it, and basically flipped it back. And what he did was he upgraded all of my keys and gave me a key to winter field day, because I was an original, you know, I bought the entire suite at one point. So he's even added logging programs, and he will give you, because you've done that, you've bought the suite, he'll give you what he's added to the suite. It's just, the guy's outstanding. So highly recommended from that perspective.
And in closing, I want to emphasize the support group. You have a specific question or an issue, or you're trying to work something out and you don't quite understand it, put it out on the user group query, and you'll get many replies, not only from Scott but other users. So it's a great support group. So anyway, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you for that. Appreciate you being part of our presentation group this morning. I am being prompted on this, so I'm not being as professional as I might sound. I am following a script. It sounds like we want to probably go to November Bravo 1 Zulu next. So Frank, you are up, sir.
All right. Okay. Let me share my screen with you. And okay, the screen is coming up. So what do you see so far?
MacLoggerDX. Dun, dun, dun.
All right. This, if you have a Macintosh, this is the program for you. The premier Mac logging software. And you can find all the details at dogsoftware.com.
Hang on, Frank, just a second. Attention, Jay Goldberg. Attention, Jay Goldberg. This is the show that you want to attend.
Yeah, Roger.
Go ahead, Frank.
If you want easy software, this is it. And let's say, well, you know, I started out doing Oscar, AMSAT, satellites, and I was using the Mac Doppler program decades ago. And this program interfaces with the satellite tracking software, same people. So they've been making ham radio software forever. You do have to pay for it, but as you know, with Mac software, you generally get quality hardware, quality software, and you get low life cycle costs. So you pay a little bit up front, but MacLoggerDX is interesting because you get service. There's a comment in the chat box about broken log. With MacLoggerDX, Don will go fix your log for you. So great service. So that's one thing you're paying for. It's not free, $95, but this software is kind of like a lot of the other softwares that it interfaces to your radio, has a very fast database. You can work all the digital modes and automatically log the digital modes. You have the spotter networks. You can upload your QSL cards, and so it does a little bit of everything. This is a great year to be a ham because National Contest Journal is free. ARRL members have the free issue. And it's the digital one. And the January issue of National Contest Journal is a great example of a small VHF station. Jim has his portable, well, you can see Jim standing on top of his car with a 2 meter, 440, 6 meter. And I think he's actually squeezed a 220 Yagi in there also for contesting. So he has a collection at home and on his vehicles, and he goes out and does roving, and he uses MacLoggerDX to log his contacts at home and out in the field. He'll go on a VHF contest and go from grid square to grid square and help everybody out with contacts. So there's a nice overview in that January National Contest Journal about his station, his software, the evolution of antennas over time. So it's a great way of learning about how to set up a VHF station. And he started with his Apple laptop, but he then switched to a Windows laptop. So Mac isn't for everybody. Now, we don't know why he switched. It could be he already had a large Windows PC all this time. So he moved over to N3 FJP, and he says he'd love to try N1MM. And because he does a lot of roving, Rover Log is another potential log software. So, but I love my Mac and MacLoggerDX, so I've been using it for quite a while, and it's easy to use. That's for Jay. So I'm not going to switch to another logger. So why don't I show you how complex it is to enter QSO. And here's MacLogger setup. Some of my VHF log is here. Actually, I have this hooked up to my, I can move the dial on my HF rig on 20 meters and it follows me. It knows I'm on upper sideband, splits off. So let me give you the detailed procedure for working a station. For example, if I CW1AW, it will then fill in the time, get the frequency band. Oh no, his grid square. So all I have to do, if I make the contact, I hit one button, log QSO, and I'm done. It will then appear at the bottom of the screen in the rolling log sheet here. So, so it's easy. And I can actually turn my radio off if I want to actually use another radio. During the contest, I used 2 radios. I had my FT991 on 6 meters, and I had a separate Yaesu on 2 meters, 220. Rather 2 meters and 440. So I can interface a rotor. I can switch radios by toggling them. And I actually have quite a few features. I've got the map display, which shows the DX spotter things coming in. Actually, 3D mode, so you can see the Earth and all the spots coming in. I have, similar to other programs, I have the band mode. You can see all the activity on the bands. So you can click them, they're color coded. And let's see, Jay was wondering, how do you do a contest mode? Go to preferences. Bring that up here. Preferences. I can set up my station. I can set up my radio, set up my rotator, and go to contest mode and select the contest I want. Lots of contests in the pull down menu. And I selected the June VHF one. And you can say in your log, what do you want to show up in your window? So I just have something simple here. And, but you can also set up alarms, detail your map, lots of log details, very flexible with logs. And so when I go to my main window, instead of working in the DX mode where I am right now, switch to the contest mode, I've got a simplified display. Just type in the contact and grid square and hit log. So it simplifies the screen for logging, automatically controls the radio, and we're ready to go. So it turns out to be pretty easy. So any questions?
I have a couple. I see on the website that he has a a free demo to try it for yourself. So that might be worth trying. Is there a control? So that's a very busy screen for all the bands. Can you remove some of those bands from that screen?
Actually, every one of these is a tear-off window. So I think I can actually tear off my map and put it in a separate screen and make it smaller. And actually, I can make it as pretty unbusy, make it small, unbusy, uncluttered. So it's actually pretty flexible in that manner.
And how does it, well, FLDigi is, of course, a Windows program. So how would it interface with digital? I mean, there is a WSTAJX for Mac, I think, but what about the other digital modes? What do you do for other digital modes?
Well, they're on the Mac also. So it works fine. In fact, I actually started to make a couple 6-meter FT8 contacts, and they went away just as I was responding to them. So I almost got some digital modes going with automatic logging, but it was near the end of the day though. So I have done that, and that turned out to be pretty easy. I was just a little slow in getting it started for the contest, but I'll practice and get better at it.
What Mac digital software do you suggest?
Oh, that's the free software for FT8 and.
Oh, it's part of. You mean WSTJ, the Joe Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, and so
FLDigi. And,
well, FLDigi, does that come on the Mac or is it Windows only?
oh, it's on the Mac too.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, FLDigi
Everything,
run on Linux.
yeah, everything you need's on the Mac.
Okay.
However, WinLink is not.
I know.
I use Parallels, and I have flawless WinLink connectivity, so I can run this side by side with WinLink and my Windows software. So it's not a problem.
There is one hand up.
Yeah.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Frank, I assume that you're a real Mac fan and everything. I hope you like yours. I like my Mac and everything. Just wanted to comment on that.
I love my Mac because I've been using it for decades. I was doing scientific computing on early Macs. Yeah, doing electromagnetics analysis. So a lot of fun. Yeah.
Outstanding. Thank you.
But in summary, it's simple, easy, and you can make it uncluttered. So it's a fun piece of software. So go
Very
ahead,
good.
Bruce. Yeah.
Any other questions for Frank? Cool. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you doing that. And again, for any follow-on, if you think of something outside of the meeting construct, wouldn't be a bad idea to go out and float that in the Yahoo group's email. That way everybody can share from the experience and learn. Looks like next, and as our final presenter, we'll go to K6AQ, Mooneer.
Hey, so let me share my screen real quick. Oh, actually, see if I can. You'll, yeah, the screen you'll need to stop sharing so I can share mine.
Oh, let's see.
Put the brakes on, Frank.
Okay, I have to find the button. The button disappeared. Okay, meeting.
Stop share. You passed it.
Oh, under meeting?
Yeah. So it's go down.
Oh,
You're past it.
oh, stop share. There it is. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay. There, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
We're good.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about Aether. Ether. I think that how you pronounce it one of those ways.
Depends on whether you're watching one of those movies where you're on some other foreign planet. Go ahead.
So it's a fair. I mostly just I do hand logging mostly because due to SOTA, it's kind of a habit I got into with Summits on the Air. But for the VHF contest, I did or VHF Rally recently, I did download a log tool so that I can do the log submission. And it's not as I guess it's not as full featured as some of the other ones that were mentioned earlier. But there is the ability to track awards and your progress towards them. And then there is rig control as well as copying the frequency, mode, and power information to your log, so you don't have to remember to do that. And then you can do import and export. So like, for instance, even though there's no direct connection to, say, WSJT or FLDigi, you can those do have like a built-in logging capability. So you can import the ADIF file that those produce into this tool, into the Aether. And then there's automatic checking of duplicates, and you can synchronize your QSLs with Logbook of the World and EQSL. And then there's a mapping function. There's a mapping function as well. So once you type in the person's call sign, you can see where they're located and how far. And then it also pulls up their callbook information from QRZ. And this Aether is free. It's free, but you're limited to 30 QSOs. If you want to go beyond that, then it's $39. And you can purchase it either directly from the aetherlog.com, or you can go to the Mac App Store and purchase it from here. So I'll go ahead and pull up the app right now. So I have inside the app, you can create like separate logs. So like I have one just for the VHF Rally. And as you can see, like say I click on K6RJF's entry here, for example, it shows that I've done 2 QSOs with them in this file. So if I click on show, it filters out the log so that only our QSOs between me and him show up here. And then like say I click on like one of the entries, it automatically pulls up the information from QRZ. So it shows address, latitude, and longitude. There is one thing that I noticed on here, like if you have a PIL box, it doesn't do latitude and longitude at all. So it says that it claims that I did a 7,000 mile, 70 centimeter FM simplex contact on only 5 watts, which seems pretty unlikely. But you might be able to like actually correct this by hand and have it show something more accurate. But yeah, so if I can, so we'll go ahead and create another one so I don't mess this one up. So to show what I was talking about, if I type in K6RJF, it automatically populated here. If I had the radio plugged in, then it would automatically populate the frequency band and power, and then the mode as well. I think mode as well. But if you go down to the list of modes, there's all the standard ones. There's not any of the more modern ones. Like I can't put digital voice here, but I guess I can type that in by hand if necessary. And then if I can go and view my own station info, like what call sign I'm operating as, and then that as well populates my information in Grid Square. And then for contest, I can choose like a specific contest. So let's say, for instance, the California QSO party. And then I can choose, it populates the rest of these fields based on that particular contest. So say I'm single op, and then it's a single sideband contest, and I'm operating QRP, and then all bands. And then it doesn't look like it doesn't look like it auto like changes the fields at all. So like, but it does mention transmit exchange, receive exchange. So for the VHF, if we go back to the VHF contest, that's what I was using to populate the grid square that was being reported on the air. So I would put DM12 for me, and then I'd put whatever was received from the other end. So like for all the contacts that I was making, they were all pretty much DM12. But yeah, so like after I populated all this, I can go ahead and do new QSO. And as you can see, it automatically, if I was doing this live, it would automatically populate date and time. So I don't have to. And then if you wanted to, I believe there's a way to, because I was looking at this earlier, there was a way to do it to, I think there's a way you could switch between the local time and UTC. But from my understanding, from what I could tell when I actually exported the log, it was exporting in UTC. So this was, I think this is just like for the benefit of for benefit of myself or like anyone else using it. But yeah, like you can just keep clicking new QSOs as you're entering them. And then like once you're done, and then if you mess up, you can do delete or like actually click on the entry and modify it. And then if you go to the top of the screen, you can view the QRZ profile for that particular QSO. So for instance, here's Rob's QRZ page. And then same thing with the Google map. Like it shows, if it can pull the address, it shows like where they're located. And then I can add to my system's address book. Or like if there was an email populated here, I could send an email. And then there's a button here as well to synchronize with EQSL and Logbook of the World. And then I can show like what awards are getting tracked. So like Worked All States, Century Club, both VHF, UHF, and DX, Islands of the World, Worked All Zones, and in US counties. It doesn't look like there's any other contests or awards that is currently tracking, but like I imagine if you emailed the maintainer of Aether, that's probably straightforward to get added. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have. See if if there's any other question, if anyone has any questions.
Good deal.
Okay. It
Thanks,
doesn't.
Mooneer.
Yep.
And again, any follow-up, any afterthoughts, any comments, certainly be beneficial. We want circulated via email. We can work it from there. All right. Any other closing thoughts or any other items or agenda pieces we might have missed before we start wrapping things up here?
Did you want just a summary of the VHF contest data that we have currently?
To date, sure, that would be good.
Okay, bringing the file up now, and I'll share my desktop quickly. Okay, has everybody seen my the spreadsheet here?
Screen's good.
Okay. So this is the raw data that I collected. It depended on the logs, like some logs didn't include some data, which is fine. I just included it anyway. I did have one paper log, which I entered in as well. So just to give you, this is out there on the groups file area. So I uploaded it last night, the current data. There's a couple of stats cited, so there's a pivot on this, but one thing to note is just a little formula in here based on the email. Some call signs gave you a little bonus. So if you contacted that one. So that's all in here and goes into a pivot table, which isn't nearly as exciting as this. Let me just zoom in. So we had 236 QSOs, and the big thing here obviously is the number of contacts and points. So currently in the lead based on the logs that I have right now is K6RJF, big round of applause. You know, the 330 points out of 30, that's because he made sure that he went out and got all the bonus points. So great job, Rob. So that's the current standings. Again, all of this is out there. As you can see, I came out here on the bottom with only 33 points, and AF6 GM and KC6 MIE are both tied for last place. So great job, guys. And then I did go in and just see which logging software folks were using and tried to capture that on here. I did get a one paper log, and then one of the users put their data into like a spreadsheet and sent it over to me, which is just fine. So prefer spreadsheets because what I did is I took the ADF logs, converted them into spreadsheets, and just pasted the data in. So that's the quick summary for the VHF contest, and I'll turn that back over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, sir. A quick question. Did you actually receive anybody, well, did you receive anything that wasn't through a logging program? I know I looked at your sheet and you were trying to correlate, but did anybody send you a Word document, or did anybody take any photos yet and get them to you? Or
I got one photo that had a few pages from their paper log, and I received a spreadsheet, and I may have had one other data file, but all of those should be included. If you don't see your data out there, somehow I missed it, please let me know. And okay. I think Bruce mentioned at the beginning that you could still send your logs in, which I'm happy to include in the data.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put and we'll send an update via email on this as well. Let's go ahead and put a cutoff in there of next Sunday, which will be the 17th of May. And I'm really hopeful that we'll see some of the folks turn in logs that were up in LA or outside of San Diego. I know there were a number of them that were engaged, and some of them were actually sounding like they were doing a fairly decent job of being in the fray and online. So I'm very hopeful that we can go out and get some of their data points as well. How does the group feel in general about doing this event over again on either the 23rd or the 30th? Those are Saturdays respectively, and 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out. And that'll put us, you know, again, a couple of weeks before we get into the June event, just for additional practice or getting station changes done, logging changes done, radio changes done, things that you want to adjust or make accommodations for before we get to June.
Bruce, are we having a normal Zoom meeting on the 23rd?
It'll be a short meeting, I would expect. So yes, that would take up part of the morning, maybe for an hour or so, Jay.
If you click on the participants button, you can click a yes or a no on there.
So Bruce, you're thinking about VHF before we do another HF rally?
Well, that was going to be the next question, was do we want to do another HF version of this as well? And maybe put that on the opposing Saturday. Not sure which would make easier accommodations for folks or the most sense, but I'm offering it up as an opportunity to discuss.
See a bunch of yeses out there, but I'm not sure which one they're for.
Well, we were first talking about VHF. Let's
All
stay
right.
on the VHF track first.
Yes, but which date were you talking about?
Let's go ahead and think about the 30th, although isn't that no, it's not a holiday weekend. The 23rd would be the beginning of the holiday weekend. You know, with the COVID related things, it's kind of hard to think about a holiday weekend. I'll just kind of put that on the rest. How about we do the HF on the 23rd and we do VHF on the 30th?
Would you say that again, Bruce?
I'm proposing that we do the HF rally like we have done previously on the 23rd of May, which is a Saturday. That'll also be a brief Zoom meeting for maybe an hour or so in the morning. And then do the VHF rally again in 3 weeks, which will be the 30th of May.
Do we have anything going for next Saturday?
Not that I am aware of, but that's just me. What are you thinking, Rob?
Well, a dead weekend. What will I do all Saturday?
I don't know, go to Costco, look at the empty meat department, the empty paper department. I don't know.
Empty Clorox department.
You can do yard work.
I'm open to suggestions.
Ask your wife.
With filters.
I need my house painted.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, you could have a mini rally every Saturday, but I think we'd be lacking in participation.
Yeah, there might be burnout.
So do we
So
want to?
HF on May 23rd and VHF on May 30?
2 successive weekends, huh? Might work, might not.
When's Judy going to have her general license by? She maybe had to leave.
All right, let's go ahead and just tentatively put it on the calendar for that, Rob.
Will do.
And if suddenly we get gigantic pulse that differs from that, we can discuss accommodations or changes, but let's tentatively target it. And Jay, AF6GM, I want to commend you on your background screen, because every time you leave and get out of camera view, you magically disappear into the forest like a Keebler elf. It's quite entertaining.
Well, if it's probably the same sort of thing. I was trying to figure out how you get you know, a background to be the real picture, and I think if I cover the camera,
yep,
and there we go. So
no, but when you physically get up and move, it's awesome, because you literally just disappear into the forest. It's great.
I have to I had to turn the light back on. So
all right, any other closing comments or thoughts for today's meeting, and we can carry on with the rest of Saturday.
DAW.
Mr. Craig.
Morning, everybody. On the races here, the foot races in the Real East County, I understand they've canceled the 100. Pacific Crest Trail 50 that the Mountain Empire Club supports has been rescheduled at this time to Saturday, September 5th. So we'll see how that goes. As it gets closer, we'll send an email out to our lists.
Very good. All right, I don't have anything else. I hope everybody stays safe, stays well, gets better, and improves if you happen to be under the weather or coming out of something. And we'll look forward to our next meeting, and as well as cooperation online. All right, 73. Have a good day.
All right, is there anything that anybody really needs that one of us could take care of? Just want to make sure everybody's okay. Since I don't see any hands up, I'm going to assume everybody's in fairly good shape.
Hey, many thanks to the presenters and to the engaging conversation.
They're very, very educational on all the different softwares. I personally don't use a Mac. I don't have one. That's why. I've used both of the other ones, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. So I think it's more what you become accustomed to as well.
Thanks to all.
And just a reminder again before we drop off, the 6-meter sprint tonight, 4 to 8 o'clock local time. Just pretend it's the VHF Rally, but one band.
All right, sounds good. And we will see everybody in 2 weeks for a short Zoom meeting and some VHF fun during the day. And I'm sure we'll come out with a schedule and suggested bands, just like we did the last time. Probably start at 9, and then take a break for a Zoom meeting at 10, and continue for the rest of the day. Again, thanks everybody for being there, and we're looking forward to it. And as Pat said here in chat, with the quarantine, every day is Saturdays, so let's just have some fun with radio.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, everyone.
see ya. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.